A review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The government's under pressure to do more to tackle the cost of living. I'll have the latest on that. Plus, I'm joined by former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith to discuss gambling-related harm. We're talking about the government's plans for schools and political punches after that slap at the Oscars last night. First, it's the news with Tamsin.
Gloria, thank you. It's 12 o'clock. Here are the latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Ukraine says the war has cost £430 billion in damages and losses so far. Fighting continues in the southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor estimates about 160,000 people are still trapped there without heating. Speaking from Kiev, Ukraine's former ambassador to the EU, Konstantin Yulysiev, told GB News his country needs more support.
We need military equipment. We need anti-air equipment. We need anti-tank, weapons. Of course, we need fighter jet. This is with what we can accelerate the victory of Ukrainian armed forces. And here we count very much on you. And secondly, we expect from our partners to increase the level of sanctions. The sanctions must be devastated.
Here, the government is urging public sector bodies, including schools and councils, to review any contracts they have with Russian firms and consider switching suppliers. It says public money should not be funding President Putin's war machine. The former Prime Minister, David Cameron, says Russia's president needs to face justice.
What Putin is doing belongs in another century, and frankly, he belongs in front of a war crimes tribunal. It is so appalling, and it's not as if we're getting sort of inured to it. Every day you switch on the news and more unbelievable, terrible things are happening in terms of bombing hospitals and schools.
Britain and Australia are joining forces to send humanitarian aid to Ukraine, with the first of 2 planes heading to Poland tomorrow. The UK has also sent a shipment of British military supplies to NATO to bolster security in the Baltic Sea. Royal Navy vessels brought vehicles and equipment to resupply the battle group in Estonia. The government says it will change the law to prevent the P&O ferry sackings. The Transport Secretary has told the company he also plans to block attempts to pay workers less than the minimum wage. In a letter to the Chief Executive, Peter Hebblethwaite, Grant Shapps wrote that he still has the opportunity to offer all 800 sacked workers their jobs back on their previous terms. An Irish businessman has been jailed for 21 years for drug smuggling. Thomas Kavanagh, described by prosecutors as the head of an organised crime gang, lived in a gated home which had bulletproof glass. He pleaded guilty to conspiring to import Class A and Class B drugs, as well as money laundering. Matt Horn from the National Crime Agency says the gang imported more than £30 million worth of cocaine and cannabis.
We have dismantled this organised crime group. They were operating using an extensive overseas network to import drugs and firearms into the UK on an industrial scale. They thought perhaps, that they were untouchable. But we've shown here that that is absolutely not the case.
The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support, such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. And the government wants the proportion of primary school leavers meeting literacy and numeracy standards to go up from 65% in 2019 to 90% by 2030. China has announced a two-stage lockdown in Shanghai. It's after a record surge in COVID cases in the financial hub. Bridges and tunnels have been closed and traffic is being restricted as officials try to contain the spread among its population of 26 million. There was drama at the Oscars with Will Smith hitting host Chris Rock during the awards ceremony, prompting the Academy to post a response saying it doesn't condone violence of any form. The incident happened when Chris Rock made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. It happened just minutes before Will Smith picked up Best Actor for his role in King Richard.
I look like the crazy father, just like they said. I look like crazy father, just like they said about Richard Williams. But love will make you do crazy things.
This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now it's back to Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, Chancellor Rishi Sunak's spring statement last week didn't go down so well. What extra measures might the government take to help as prices soar? Our political editor will tell us shortly. I'll be joined by former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. He's Vice Chair of the All-Parliamentary Group on Gambling-Related Harm. The government publishes its plans for schools today. I'll be talking to Labour MP Janet Davey about that and her constituent who finally was released from detention in Iran along with Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. And everyone is talking about that punch at the Oscars last night. We'll be talking political punches with the Mirror's Kevin Maguire. Remember John Prescott? If Rishi Sunak thought his spring statement would calm fears over soaring prices, he'll be thinking again. The government's under pressure to do more. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is in Westminster for us. Darren, has the sun stopped shining on Rishi Sunak?
Yeah, I think it has, or certainly the shine has come off the Chancellor following that spring statement, Gloria, last week. Many Conservative MPs, much of the Conservative press, it must be said, not terribly happy with the limited nature, I think it's fair to say, of the spring statements. I remember being in the chamber at the time and one Labour MP shouted across the aisle, "Is that it?" But it is certainly a sentiment I think is shared by many. And there is an indication from Number 10, a recognition over the weekend that they are going to have to do more on this cost of living crisis, with inflation expected to hit 8, maybe 9% this year. Energy bills clearly going up, not just next month, but almost certainly in October too. And add to that this national insurance rise and the change to the income tax thresholds mean that lots more people will be paying lots more tax from next month, mean that there is a genuine squeeze on living standards. What the biggest fall in household disposable income since records began back in the 1950s. So what is Rishi Sunak going to do about all of this? Well, first of all, he's appearing later on today in front of the Treasury Select Committee. I suspect he's going to get a pretty tough time from even his own side in what more he can do, particularly to help the poorest in society who've not at all benefited majorly from last week's announcements, those mitigations that were made. But also, I feel that the government, whether it be next month, whether it be in a couple of months' time, are going to have to come back to this and going to have to revise what more help they can provide as one Downing Street source put it this weekend, they realise this is a train that is going to hit them and hit them pretty hard, and they are going to have to do more. I think the one upside for the Prime Minister, who clearly wants to spend more money than the Chancellor, is that having somewhat, as I say, taken the shine off the Chancellor, this may well have made his position a bit more certain, because, as I say, many Conservative MPs are now asking, is Rishi Sunak potentially the leader we want to take over if Boris Johnson was forced to step down?
Indeed, and as you say, it is mooted that more help could be on the way to help households. Do you have any sense of what that help might look like?
Well, I think the government at the moment again are looking at this issue of council tax, because there is a mechanism essentially for them to have a rebate on tax account rises. We know, for example, they are going to give 150 quid back, aren't they, later on this year. Now, that could be massively increased, maybe up to £400. Clearly, the Labour Party want to see them go further on this issue, specifically of energy, removing VAT, which the government can now do with the UK having left the EU. But it is something that the government so far have resisted. But also there could be and should be an attempt, many would say, to bring down the price of energy. And that means the UK looking at its energy strategy. Now, the Prime Minister promised about a month ago that there would be an energy strategy published within days, Gloria. We're weeks and weeks after that, and there's a possibility it might not even emerge this week, that it might be pushed back to April. Big disagreements about where the UK's future energy supply and reliance should come on. We know that it should be a bit more independent. Some people campaigning for fracking to be looked at again, others saying that the gas and oil reserves in the North Sea should be properly explored, others making the argument that this is the time to kind of turbo boost, if you like, the green agenda even more with wind and solar. But what's clear is there's clearly not an agreement within government on all of this. So, as I say, the Prime Minister in one camp making an argument Boris Johnson's always made, cakeism if you like, that he's not really worried about the long-term economic finances. His critics claim he just wants to spend money now to get him through this current crisis. Many would agree, though, given the scale of the crisis, that is necessary. Whereas the Chancellor made it clear last week that when you look at the state of the public finances, when you look at how much interest we're going to spend in the coming years servicing our increasing debt, that is not a sensible or rational strategy. Who's going to win this battle? Well, in the end, I think it's probably going to be the Prime Minister, given that this real bite will hit voters ahead of those local elections, which could prove very difficult for the governments.
Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, thank you for that update. Thank you. Now, though some in the Conservative Party are glad to see fiscal restraint, many are unhappy with Rishi Sunak. I'm delighted to be joined now by former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, who is Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Gambling-Related Harm. There's going to be a debate on that in Parliament tomorrow, and we'll be coming to that shortly. But Ian Duncan-Smith, if I may, can I ask you about all the reports that more help is on the way to help struggling families with the cost of living crisis, and whether you think that help is needed, more help?
Morning, Gloria. Well, two things have got to be said about this. First of all, what is the problem? And I think there tend to be little bits being thrown at us all over the place. The truth right now is the real threat facing not just the UK economy, by the way. These are not problems just in the UK. These are problems felt now in pretty much the developed world. And the threat is essentially a juxtaposition between two things. One is collapsing growth and rising inflation, what they call stagflation. We last faced that kind of problem in the oil crisis, I think, in the 1970s, and I was old enough then to remember that. And the worst thing you can do when you're faced with stagflation is to get on with a fiscal tightening, because that then creates that downward trend on growth. But it doesn't arrest inflation, and inflation will spiral because of the underlying costs, such as energy, which are huge. So you need to tackle that. And so my view has been quite clearly, and I've said it publicly before, I think what we need is a bold move from the government. They've done a number of things which are helpful. Council tax rebates are important, some loans as well. Trouble is, though, these get complex. The public needs to see something very simple. And my view, therefore, is, first of all, VAT absolutely should be cut dramatically on energy bills, if not got rid of. And the second thing is, of course, national insurance. The proposed rise makes a mockery of any reduction. So we've got headroom. The economy's done much better in the last 12 months. It's got much more money as a result. I don't say that's brilliant because we've still got big debts, but we do need to think very carefully of using that extra to either postpone or certainly stop the national insurance rise, which will take the pressure off people's shoulders in the next 6 months dramatically.
Thank you for that. Now, the reason we invited you on today is there is a debate in Parliament this week, tomorrow in fact, on gambling-related harm, and you're vice chair of that all-party parliamentary group. Can I start by asking you, why is this an issue that's important to you?
It's important to me, but not just me, as you know. It's a cross-party affair. Well, the problem is that we believe that when the gambling reforms were brought through, and you recall this was under a Labour government, it's not a political point, it's just a fact of life, they were liberalised very significantly. At the time, I was concerned about that, and I warned that this could lead to serious abuses. What has actually happened is that we do have just a whole chain of abusive behaviour by the gambling industry. And in the pursuit of their profits, what they've done is they've literally used those who should least be used, people who have a gambling problem. We know now 7% of the public are badly affected or damaged by gambling, either because they themselves are problem gamblers or they are families of, and we've heard of suicides and serious issues, breaking up family life and the debts and fraud taking place around this. So we're proposing to tighten up on this and to help restrain this to a degree. It's not anti-gambling, it's just saying get some control back so that these gambling companies don't have it all their own way. And what the biggest, for me, problem has been their behavior over these things called VIP rooms, where they've been literally targeting, using all sorts of smart computer systems to target those who gamble and gamble beyond their own means. And then they induce them into special areas they call VIP rooms, where they get to meet celebrities who get paid for this, and they also get special free gambling to begin with to entice them deeper in. And of course, they're the ones that you should be protecting, not trying to damage more. So there are a number of proposals we've made to tighten this up so that this actually helps it.
The gambling industry point to research by the Gambling Commission saying that problem gambling is 0.3%, down from 0.6% 18 months ago. What do you say to that?
It's much wider than that, and I don't actually agree those figures. We believe it's at least still at 0.5 to 0.6%, but that's directly those involved. And that's, think of the population. It's 0.5% of the British population of over 60 million. That's a very significant number of people who are now having to have treatment and support. But beyond that, the figure I gave of 7% is all those who are directly and indirectly involved in getting damaged by this. Families, we've spoken to the most desperate situations families are in, to families themselves who've seen their loved ones commit suicide, to go bankrupt, to drag the families down with them, spending money they don't have, lying, eventually having to go to fraud. All these things are damaging, and the gambling companies are behaving really in a very arrogant manner. They think that their ability to make huge profits, regardless of the effect on those who are most affected, and that is a problem that will get worse, particularly amongst young people. They advertise, they spend over $2.5 billion on advertising, targeted mostly at young men, in-play gambling, which shouldn't be around, advertising around football matches, etc. All this stuff is really damaging and will get worse because it's got worse in terms of the advertising and the projection of gambling during the course of the pandemic.
As we come to the end of the interview, forgive me for asking you what the nation is talking about today, which is that punch at the Oscars. Simon Hoare, your Conservative parliamentary colleague, says, "I just hope if someone thought it in good taste to make a joke at the expense of a medical condition of my wife, I'd get up and lamp him." Is he right?
Well, I'd find that an amusing sight to watch. Simon Hoare, he doesn't look to me like much of a pugilist. But anyway, the point I would simply say is, look, the reality is I don't watch the Oscars because I find it a self-serving affair. But that notwithstanding, you can't avoid the clip. All I would say is that I don't think anybody has the right to get up and hit somebody else, whatever the circumstances are. We all get abuse. You will remember that yourself, Gloria. If you're in the public eye, you get that abuse. Whilst you don't want it to be damaging, at the same time, there are other ways to deal with it. And certainly I wouldn't recommend anybody takes action into their own hands, because that can be violent, dangerous, and very, very damaging.
Ian Duncan-Smith, a real delight to have you on the show. Thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Now, the government publishes its plans for schools today. I'll be discussing that with Labour MP Janet Davey shortly, and also her constituent, Anusha Ashori, who is finally free from Iran and arrived back home with Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe last couple of weeks ago. Before that, let's take a look at the weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but it's a lot more cloud in the sky for some, and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England. 1 or 2 possible for Northern Ireland later, as well as the southern part of England. Just the odd shower here, but cloudier skies for southern England, and this cloudy zone for central and southern parts of Scotland into northern England as well. Where we've got some sunshine remaining though, 15 or 16 Celsius, still feeling warm, still above average for the time of year. Heading into the evening though, we'll see an area of more organised rain or showers push into southern counties of England. The showers across northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland fade away, but another plume of showers moves into the far north of Scotland. Away from the cloud and the showers, temperatures will drop into the mid-single figures, but holding up at 9 Celsius where we've got a lot of cloud cover. A cold front, though, is on its way. That's pushing into the north of Scotland during Tuesday itself. That's going to bring in much colder air for the end of the week, but we begin Tuesday generally frost-free and a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, particularly for central and eastern England. Now, that will tend to retreat back to the North Sea, but we keep mostly grey skies, I think, in many places. And there'll be further showers for English Channel coast, showers popping up elsewhere as well. And it's going to feel cooler, 12 to 14 Celsius in the south. Much colder there for the north of Scotland as rain and hill snow crosses central Scotland during Tuesday afternoon, followed by wintry flurries for the Northern Isles and the far north coast of Scotland. And that ushers in a real change for the second half of the week. We're going to see the cold air sink south. We're going to see in many places some further showers, which will consist of rain, sleet, hail and snow, and a significant drop in temperatures.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, children have had a terrible time in the pandemic, and today the government is publishing its plans which aim to guarantee help for those struggling with English and maths. The plans will also make a minimum of a 32.5-hour week at school compulsory. Joining me now is Labour MP for Lewisham East, Janet Davey. Janet, welcome to the show. I think it's your first time on my show. You are very welcome, not least because you are my Member of Parliament. The government is setting out targets to drive up maths and English standards in schools in England. They'll be setting those plans out later. You welcome that?
Well, good morning, Gloria. Pleased to be on your show. The plans that the government are introducing are actually things they should be doing already. Obviously, all parents and teachers want to see and know that children's education is improving and that they're meeting the targets that are being set. But obviously the pandemic has really affected many schools. Schools have really struggled to stay on top, especially the teachers. And we need to make sure that the teachers have the support that they need, that there are classroom support teachers in place, and making sure that we are having the pupils have the mental health support that they need as well, because as we know, especially more teenagers have really felt the isolation from the pandemic. So there are real misses that the government's where they're missing really the target, I think, and it's about listening to head teachers and listening to parents and making sure that they are meeting the requirements that are needed in schools and that children really need.
And just a question on the cost of living. Does the Labour Party believe more help is needed, or does the Labour Party get that Rishi Sunak is right to focus on balancing the books?
So, I mean, focusing on the cost of living, there's been an increasing crisis really for many people that are low wage earners, that are on 0-hour contracts, people that have lost their jobs through being self-employed during the pandemic. So that the cost of living is really hit. And in my area, we've actually seen a huge rise in people using food banks. And going back to the education, one of the things that Labour is calling for in terms of a children's plan is making sure that no child goes without food. Now, obviously, Rishi Sunak needs to balance the books, but according to the books that he wants to balance, £6 in tax, and he's only giving £1 back. How does that help people that are really struggling with the cost of living? I don't think that's right.
Janet, I want to talk to you about your constituent, Anousheh Ashouri, detained in an Iranian prison since 2017. I know you campaigned hard during that time for his release. He is now free, came back with Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. How is he?
I mean, it's an amazing family, really. Sherry, the wife, has really campaigned for such a long time. The first 2 years when he was in prison, the family had been given advice along with the son and daughter about not bringing this to the public eye. They realised that within that 2 years, they didn't feel that anything was moving forward and the government wasn't making any progress in getting his release. So they started going public with their campaign for the last 3 years. And they've been absolutely amazing in that process and really strong. I've met Anousheh since he's been out. It's a pleasure to to be with the family and to see them all united and back together. That's really something quite amazing. But you really can't give him back those 5 years where he's lost that time. He's been in really traumatic situations. He has this sense, I feel, of survivor's guilt, where he knows that many people that are left in the prison in Evin prison, that he knows are innocent, that he knows that they're still there, but yet he's back with his family. So I don't think this is over yet. What we do know is to do with Morad, somebody who's still in that prison. He hasn't had the same campaigning and publicity. And my concerns really are to do with Nazanin and Anousheh. They had great campaigns. I was part of the campaign for Anousheh, obviously, and they've been released. But what about others that are in that prison that are still there? So although I'm really immensely pleased for Anousheh and his family, and I'm confident that that things will move forward for them, I'm still very concerned about who's left in that prison.
We are short on time, but I just want to ask you about the fact that Anousheh revealed in a recent interview that Boris Johnson did not respond to any appeals from his family while he was detained, but since his release, the Prime Minister has asked to meet with him. Any thoughts on or knowledge on whether he will now meet with the Prime Minister?
I think that I'll try and make it brief. I think the real struggle here for the family is that when they were at their deepest hour of need, they really needed support from the Prime Minister. He wasn't there. The debt has been paid, rightly so. That debt's been paid. They've been released. That situation could have been cleared up a lot sooner. So there's this deep disappointment. I've also been invited to join that meeting, and the family and I are still discussing whether they're going to meet with the Prime Minister or not.
Janet Davey, a pleasure to have you on the show. Hope it'll be the first appearance of many. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
After the break, Will Smith takes a leaf out of John Prescott's book and slaps fellow A-lister Chris Rock at the Oscars. We ask, can punch-ups ever help politicians? Before that, it's the news with Tamsin.
Gloria, thank you. It's 12:30. Here are the headlines from the GB newsroom. Ukraine says the war has cost the country £430 billion in damages and losses so far. Fighting continues in the southern city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor says they're on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, estimating about 160,000 people are trapped in the city without heating. The Transport Secretary has told the P&O Ferries chief executive he plans to block attempts to pay workers less than the minimum wage. In a letter, Grant Shapps said the company can still offer the sacked workers their jobs back on previous terms. Meanwhile, bosses from rival firms are meeting government officials today to ensure continuation of services. Irish businessman Thomas Kavanagh has been jailed for 21 years for drug smuggling. Described by prosecutors as the head of an organised crime gang, he lived in a gated home which had bulletproof glass. Kavanagh pleaded guilty to conspiring to import Class A and Class B drugs, as well as money laundering. The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support, such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. In just a moment, it's back to the briefing with Gloria.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, let's be honest, there's only one thing that's got everyone talking this morning, and it's not the latest rift in the cabinet. There was drama across the pond overnight at the Oscars when comedian Chris Rock made a joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. By now, you probably know what happened next, but we're going to show you anyway. Let's have a look.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the out of me.
That's quite something, wasn't it? Well, here on the briefing, there's a political angle to everything, and it got us thinking about parliamentary punch-ups and SW1 smackdowns. Joining me now to discuss this is someone who's seen his fair share of political altercations. It's the Mirror's Kevin Maguire. Kevin, good to see you.
Great to see you, Gloria.
Simon Hoare, the Conservative MP, has said, I just hope if someone thought it in good taste to make a joke at the expense of a medical condition of my wife, I'd get up and lamp him. What do you think of those comments?
Yeah, I know, Simon. I don't think he's the lumping type, actually. You kind of you understand what he means with the emotional level, because, of course, she is Jada Pinkett Smith suffering from alopecia, so she's losing her hair. So you crop it close. It's just a fashion statement. It's something you're doing because you want to avoid showing that it's falling out. So you kind of get that emotional spasm. And you understand it. And that may, in the end, save Will Smith, because a lot of people might say, if it was my partner, I would hope to do the same. Or women might say, if I was insulted, I'd hope if I had a male partner, they'd stand up for me. However, I do believe that it's not the right way to do it. That violence is wrong. In many other workplaces, you'd just be sacked. Will Smith was allowed to hang around and pick up a Best Actor award. You do that in your office or your factory, your call centre, your bus depot, your lorry park, whatever. Chances are you'll get a P45 and be sacked.
Fair point. Do you think politicians should ever comment on this sort of thing, or is it wiser to stay clear?
Yeah, it's interesting that, Gloria. A lot of them will get asked. I've no doubt Boris Johnson will be asked through Downing Street at the daily Westminster lobby briefing. Ministers appearing on TV, radio will be asked about it. Because, as you said, it's what everybody is talking about. It's lit people up, and you have an opinion. Those opinions might evolve. But that Will Smith defence, John Prescott, who of course is probably most famous for that 2001 election punch when he hit a voter, Craig Evans, who'd egged him, thrown an egg on him, and he hit him with his left. You saw him turn around. John Prescott ready to launch his right. He was a former boxer. He was lucky because he said he was acting in self-defence, but he punched before he saw who had hit him. If it had been a woman who'd egged him and he'd smacked her in the face, it could have been very, very different. But he was told to apologise by Tony Blair, the Prime Minister, and Alistair Campbell, the Director of Labour Communications. He said, no, it's self-defence. And the country sided with Prescott. They just felt, look, if people are acting in a rowdy, unruly way, attacking somebody, they get what they deserve. So the question around Will Smith will be whether defending the honour in that way of his wife gives him almost a free hit on Chris Rock. But the other incident I remember with John Prescott was at the Brits in 1998, and a bucket of iced water was thrown over him by a member of the Anarchist band Chumbawamba Wumba. I think it was somebody called it Dan Burton or Bacon or something like that. And I remember Prescott at the time saying, "It's outrageous this has happened. My wife Pauline was there, and other women folk. They shouldn't have to put up with this." And he was an old-fashioned guy like that, Prescott, and people liked him for it. And it's probably the closest political parallel I could see to what happened at the Oscars last night.
Now, there was another punch by an MP in Westminster. He wasn't as famous as John Prescott, but the implications of his punch had quite far-reaching consequences. Tell us about Eric Joyce, the former Labour MP for Falkirk, and what happened.
Yeah, it wasn't just a punch, it was punches and possibly a headbutt as well, with as many as 6 people, MPs, and I think it was a Tory councillor. They're all in the Strangers Bar in the House of Commons. And Eric Joyce was a former former major in the army. He was a bit of an explosive character with a short fuse. He was drinking in there, and he complained there were too many Tories in it, and he was said by one onlooker to have gone berserk. Ended up in court and fined for it, but he hit about 6 different people. Now he was a strange character. But anyway, it led to a series of events in which he stood down. I think Labour would have dropped him at the next election in Falkirk, which at the time was a safe Labour seat. And it's kind of called the butterfly effect. Did a series of events that, from that punch-up in the Strangers Bar, changed British politics, because he steps down. So you knight back Carrie Murphy, a candidate who later went to work for Jeremy Corbyn as their replacement. She is a very good organiser, gets a lot of people signed up, but she's put under huge pressure by the party over claims she acted unfairly. She absolutely denied that. I think she was actually unfairly stopped from standing for Labour. But anyway, she steps down. Labour lose all those seats in the general election of 2015, but crucially, Ed Miliband, who was the Labour leader at the time, because of what happened in Falkirk in the selection process, changes how Labour picks candidates, but also how it elects the leader. And that opened the door for Jeremy Corbyn in 2015. So it's unintended consequences. When Eric Joyce went on his rampage in Strangers Bar, he could have had no idea of the potential implications of what happened there. So you can throw a punch, you can do it at the spur of the moment, you can do it very quickly, but it can always have long-lasting impact.
Kevin Maguire, I guess the moral of the story is don't punch people. But you've been great.
Well, you're right. But punching people in Parliament's got to be better than 1809 when 2 of them had a duel. Lord Castlereagh and George Cannon, the War Minister and the Foreign Secretary, fell out, and they went to Putney Heath and had a duel. They both fired, missed. They did it again, and poor Cannon got hit in the thigh. So, punching's bad, but it's better than shooting people.
We get it all from you. That was quite a historical perspective. Thank you, Kevin Maguire. Come and chat to us again. Cheers.
Thanks, Gloria.
Cheers. Now, more COVID restrictions have been scrapped in Wales, meaning it's no longer the law that you have to wear a mask in shops or on public transport. Self-isolation rules have also ended. Our Wales reporter Lily Hewitson sent in this report.
People who live and work in Wales may well be going about their day a little bit differently today than how they've been doing over the last 2 years or so. As of this morning, masks are no longer a legal requirement here in Wales in the vast majority of settings, and the requirement to self-isolate is no longer a legal one. It's now guidance, and it's that change from legal to guidance which will mean businesses and schools like the one behind me will have some decisions to make about what to do going forward. Now, the First Minister announced the easing of rules here in Wales on Friday, which included the end of routine asymptomatic testing for school staff and for pupils in secondary school from the Easter holidays. However, teachers and teaching unions alike have raised concerns about the COVID situation in schools. They've said it's still chaotic and it's still stressful due to staffing pressures and the way that the virus moves throughout year groups. Now, the Education Minister, Jeremy Miles, has said the Welsh Government are trying to help alleviate those staffing problems, but the UCAC, the union for teachers here in Wales, say schools certainly aren't in any form of normality and there are still huge challenges ahead, and because of those staffing pressures there have been calls for more supply teacher cover in schools here in Wales. Now, I can't imagine this will be the last we'll be hearing about the COVID situation here in schools, but back to the change in general rules here in Wales. Although many of the rules are being scrapped today, people here will still have to wear a mask in health and social care settings, and businesses will have to continue to do COVID risk assessments for their staff and for their customers. And even though PCR tests are no longer going to be available to people in Wales from today, the First Minister is hoping that free lateral flow tests will be available for people until June, but that will depend on UK government funding, which we're still waiting to hear about.
Lily Hewitson reporting for us there. Now, here on The Briefing, we like to feature subjects close to MPs' hearts. One topic close to the Labour MP, Cat Smith, is help for social workers who work hard to support people and families in difficulty. She led a debate in Parliament last week. I asked her to explain to me how the narrative around social work can be changed. Cat Smith, social workers are often in the news for all the wrong reasons. You are seeking to paint a different picture. Why?
You're absolutely right, Gloria. So often headlines around social workers tend to be when something's gone wrong, most notably the death of a child who's a looked after child. And I wanted to paint a picture of the work that social workers do that is unseen. The vast majority of social workers and the vast majority of social work cases actually are positive endings where social workers are able to support people through perhaps difficult times in their lives. And people probably only ever come into social workers at challenging times. And I just wanted to paint a picture of the work that social workers do that supports families and supports individuals through quite challenging times. And particularly in the COVID context where, you know, face-to-face contact is quite difficult, social workers actually faced a really challenging set of circumstances where it was very difficult to do their jobs.
Why is it a passion of yours? Why is it a cause that you've decided to take up?
So I am the daughter of a social worker. My dad was a social worker. He's a retired social worker now, and he works in child protection and adoption and with young offenders. So I've kind of been brought up kind of knowing about what my dad did at work. And the thing is that when he worked with young people who maybe went on to reoffend and commit horrible crimes, that obviously got the headlines. But when he supported young people to sort of turn their lives around and get on the straight and narrow, so to speak, that was obviously never in the news, never in the headlines. So I felt a bit like social workers only ever get the light shone on them when it goes wrong and not when it goes right. And I just thought it's about time that we highlighted the good work that social workers do.
And do you have demands of ministers?
I do. So at the moment, the cuts to local authority budgets mean that social workers' caseloads are higher than ever. Social workers risk burning out, and my biggest concern is around access to resources. Now, for many of us, if we have a bad day at work and we're burning out and we drop the ball, you know, we might miss a meeting, we might forget to send an email. But for a social worker, dropping the ball can be a matter of life or death for a vulnerable person or a vulnerable child. So it's so important that we give social workers the resources to be able to do their jobs well and properly, and do the jobs that they actually went into social work to want to do.
Some people might say it's the Labour Party wanting more spending again. What do you say in response to that? Is money always the answer to everything?
Money is not always the answer to everything, and some of this is obviously structural as well. But the reality is that the local authority budget cuts has had a huge impact in the resources that social workers are able to draw upon. And actually, social work is a preventative thing. So if we do social work well and you keep that family together and that child doesn't go into care, that actually saves the taxpayer money in the long run. If you support that young person to turn their life around and they don't go into a career of crime, that saves us huge money in the prison service. So actually social work is a way of, if we invest in it well, of saving the taxpayer money.
And finally, you talk about tragic, horrible incidents that have made the top of our news bulletins. Arthur Lipinjo Hughes, Star Hobson, children murdered by people who were supposed to protect them and love them. Can any amount of money or investment or reform, can anybody stop people who are determined to do evil, doing evil?
That's a really big question, and after every tragic case of a child dying at the hands of the people that are meant to love and care and protect for them, we always say never again. And you know, the statement following Arthur's death in the House of Commons, you know, there was MP after MP saying this can never happen again, but it's already happened previously. You can look at Victoria Columbia, you know, this has been going on for all time. I don't know whether or not we can ever stop every single act of evil that is done against a child, but what I know is that we can do better, and if we can save more lives through resourcing social work and giving social workers the confidence to do their jobs, as well as the resources and the respect that they actually deserve for the people that they help, but that can only be a good thing.
Kat Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Labour MP Kat Smith there. Now, he was Mr. Popular during the pandemic, splashing the cash and hailed as dishy rishi. How times have changed. His spring statement hasn't pleased many. Costs are soaring. Joining me now is our very own economics editor, Liam Halligan. The sun is not shining, or the political sun is not shining on Rishi Sunak anymore, is it?
Well, Gloria, you and I hosted a 5-hour spring statement special on Wednesday, didn't we? And mighty fine it was too. But without blowing our own trumpet, the moment he sat down, we both commented on he hasn't done enough for vulnerable households. He hasn't done enough for those red wall voters in those seats the Tories won in December 2019 and need to retain. There will be people on his own back benches and across the Labour benches. Obviously, inevitably, on the Labour side, it's their job to oppose. But there will be people on his own back benches who are going to criticise this. And they have. And after my show, between 1 and 2, the Chancellor will be appearing before the Treasury Select Committee. As you know, the chair of the Treasury Select Committee, Mel Stride, is pretty forensic. There are some other extremely bright MPs.
Conservative MP who chairs it.
Indeed. There are other completely very analytical MPs who will have drilled down into all the detail, as we did last Wednesday and since. And I do think the Chancellor is in for a rough ride.
You were generous to us. I'm going to be generous to you because you said, I think he'll have to he won't be able to wait till autumn. I think he'll have to introduce some measures before we even get there. That's been mooted now, Liam.
It has.
Credit to you. What might we be looking at?
Again, we said that pretty much as he sat down.
I think it was you. I'm giving it to you.
But the other panellists agreed, including you. And I recalled after... remember March 2020 when suddenly lockdown happened and Rishi Sunak gave a statement in spring of 2020 and it soon became clear that all the numbers didn't include any of the impact of lockdown because the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibilities forecasting period, had ended before Boris Johnson had announced lockdown. And so then he had to do another summer statement a few months after. I think it's the same in this case because the OBR at the moment are appearing before the Treasury Select Committee. I've been monitoring that. And they've had to admit, I mean, it's a really important body, independent fiscal watchdog. They're world-class economists. They have no axe to grind. They're technocrats in the best sense of the word, widely respected. And they're saying that their forecasting period this time round too sort of ended around the end of February. And of course, that was just as the ghastly Russian invasion of Ukraine happened. So again, the forecast in the OBR numbers that Rishi Sunak has based all his spring statement numbers on don't really include the impact of that Russia-Ukraine conflict on food prices, on fuel prices, on the cost of living generally, slowing down growth as international trade stalls. So that's another reason, as well as the fact I think he's sort of been politically a bit inept in not helping poorer households much. He will be able to say, if he does have to come back to the Commons in the summer with another big package of measures, well, you know, blame the war because we couldn't include the war in our earlier estimates. That's another reason I think we'll see another statement soon.
But he would respond, there's nothing inept about wanting to balance the books. In fact, the Tories have won successive elections recently on that very premise and saying Labour are the profligate ones.
Now, that is his argument. And, you know, this is a guy with a picture of Nigel Lawson up on his wall, famously. Nigel Lawson, of course, the Thatcher-era Chancellor, widely seen as a very successful Chancellor, but very much a Chancellor who tried to get the finances back on the straight and narrow, but also tried to boost growth. Yes, I know that's Rishi Sunak's kind of imprimatur. On the other hand, does it really seem right to be raising taxes now, as he just did, this national insurance rise he went through, only to promise you're going to lower them in a year or year and a half's time ahead of a general election? I mean, that seems to many people at a time when families are suffering, at a time when the likes of the Resolution Foundation are saying more than 1 million families now entering into absolute poverty as a result of these spring statement measures, at a time when that national insurance rise will hit businesses, will hit ordinary, you know, sole traders, people running a company out the back of a van, not wealthy people trying to make ends meet. Does it really make sense to, you know, go through with that tax rise now only so you can enjoy the political limelight of lowering taxes before an election? It smacks of gamesmanship to an awful lot of people.
Good point. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister has reported tensions. There's always tensions, aren't there? Is that
Why can't they all get on?
But how serious is this one? I mean, it can't be as serious as Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, who were, you know...
we remember. Well, look, there's to be fair, it's a very, very difficult time. To be fair, this is the steepest drop in living standards since the 1940s. That's what the OBR says. That is not Rishi Sunak's fault. That's not Boris Johnson's fault, whatever their political rivals may say. But in situations like that, there is always going to be tension. In many ways, Gloria, as you know better than anyone here at GB News, the British government works around a system where there is tension between a very powerful Prime Minister and a pretty powerful Chancellor. And that's how we make our decisions. We live in an adversarial system. What I would say, though, is over the last weekend, it hasn't got to sort of Blair Brown levels of psychodrama, but there have been opposite sides briefing against each other using some pretty rough language on the phone. So we're starting to see signs of tension.
Looking forward to watching your show, Liam, which comes up straight after mine. Thank you, as ever, for your insights. You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. I'm back every Monday to Thursday from noon. Liam will bring you On the Money in just a couple of moments. But first, it's time for your weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but it's a lot more cloud in the sky for some and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England. 1 or 2 possible for Northern Ireland later, as well as the southern part of England. Just the odd shower here, but cloudier skies for southern England and this cloudy zone for central and southern parts of Scotland into northern England as well. Where we've got some sunshine remaining though, 15 or 16 Celsius, still feeling warm, still above average for the time of year. Heading into the evening, though, we'll see an area of more organised rain or showers push into southern counties of England. The showers across northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland fade away, but another plume of showers moves into the far north of Scotland. Away from the cloud and the showers, temperatures will drop into the mid-single figures, but holding up at 9 Celsius where we've got a lot of cloud cover. A cold front, though, is on its way. That's pushing into the north of Scotland during Tuesday itself. That's going to bring in much colder air for the end of the week. But we begin Tuesday generally frost-free and a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, particularly for central and eastern England. Now, that will tend to retreat back to the North Sea, but we keep mostly grey skies, I think, in many places. And there'll be further showers for English Channel coast, showers popping up elsewhere as well. And it's going to feel cooler. 12 to 14 Celsius in the south Much colder there for the north of Scotland as rain and hill snow crosses central Scotland during Tuesday afternoon, followed by wintry flurries for the Northern Isles and the far north coast of Scotland. And that ushers in a real change for the second half of the week. We're going to see the cold air sink south. We're going to see in many places further showers, which will consist of rain, sleet, hail and snow, and a significant drop in temperatures.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.